All right. Welcome back, everybody, to Tabletop and Beyond. Justin is not with us today. He is out and busy, but we've got some guests on the show. We got Dan, John, Lincoln. Welcome, guys.
Welcome. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, good to have you, Lincoln. Lincoln and John and myself. We played a really fun RPGs this past weekend. The Aliens RPG from Free League Publishing. So that's what we're going to hit and talk about today. But before we get going with that, we're going to go ahead and start with some Geek Week activity. So Dan, how was your Geek Week?
It's pretty good. Reunited with an old RPG group. We hadn't played for months. This was my previous Star Trek Klingon Empire group, but we kind of played through that and felt good about it. And now I'm not GMing, and I'm a player in our Shadows of the Beanstalk game. So it's one of those things where everybody had really powerful characters when we ended. So we're all starting with different characters that will interact with the new characters going forward. So it's always one of those tricky things where you don't want to pick up immediately exactly where you left off. You still want that feeling of growth when you start a campaign. So that's great. I've also decided to host bigger gaming days at my house. I've got two that I want to do. The first one is going to be in May, next to May the 6th or May the 4th. May the 4th be with you. So use Saturday, May 6th. And I've developed a narrative that links the Star Wars Age of Rebellion role-playing game with X-Wing, with Star Wars Legion, and with Star Wars Armada as a big conclusion. And I've come up with kind of a storyline that if you anywhere along the ways, when you start failing in one, it's going to have a negative impact on the resources that you're going to have to get through the end of the scenario. And I'm hoping there's some very meaningful one-shot character deaths. And I'm just, I found myself, I'm surrounded by these competitive game systems. I've invested in Armada, I've invested in X-Wing, and I've been dipping my toes in Legion. I'm not competitive in any of them. So I think my calling in life is to
do narrative.
It's my calling in life is to do more narrative, and I think I'll do big Star Wars thing once a year near May the 4th.
So I'm really excited about this. You posted something about this in our Discord. So it's going to be crossing like 3 or 4 different game systems on one day. Four and one. So this is really awesome. So I'm curious to see, like, because RPGs are typically, like all the players are kind of working together, right? When you get to like the X-Wing and the Armada and the Legion, how are you gonna do that with players?
It's gonna be like everybody against me, pretty much. So it'll be scenario driven instead of whoever kills the most guys. We're not doing that. It's gonna be you have to get the objective, and everybody who died along the way, if you fail to get that objective, that's one less thing you're going to be able to feed into the next big battle. The idea is big set pieces. Everything is a big set piece. And the RPG is just going to be the sinew things that you fill the gaps between the big battle set pieces. When you're like, oh, hey, we want to do something here. And I'm not expecting that as the GM. So I believe that if I play the Rebellion era, I will be able to find a character that has a card in X-Wing and a card in Armada and a card in or a analog in Legion, and not an exact 1-for-1 in Legion. There would be 1 or 2, but I'm going to stay away from the movie characters. So it'll be side characters, BC string folks in the background, one-liners.
Yeah, I've been looking for an excuse to build a Legion army, so sign me up.
All right. It's going to be space limited. I'm going to buy everybody lunch and buy everybody dinner and go 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and just have a great time with it and then walk away and have it be done.
Yeah, sweet.
This is my third quick little item. I've decided to go to KublaCon in San Francisco at the end of May. So my brother Nate and I went to KublaCon for the first time in 2006 and haven't been back. So it's been a good 17 years. So I'm looking forward to
You've talked about it a lot that you really enjoyed your one trip out there. So, well, it'll be interesting to see how much it's grown. Is it in the same place or is it a different venue?
In the same place. I think they've grown out to a couple other venues additionally, but it's basically the core of it is in Hyatt Regency near SFO, like right next to SFO. So the nice thing about that is the hotel is where you game for a big chunk of it. So that's kind of cool. And because my wife scheduled our 20th anniversary couples cruise right on top of Gen Con is out. She's like, well, you can still go and do a day and a half. And I'm like, I'm not going to do a day and a half at Gen Con. You could do all Thursday and a little bit. No, I'm sorry. I'm just gonna give it a miss this year.
Yeah. Well, at least you're going to get a good convention in with a family member this year. So that'll
yeah,
be cool.
And I might take my 10-year-old son.
Oh, nice.
We'll see how that goes.
All right, Dan. John, what about you, man? How's your Geek Week?
So I've been struggling lately to get stuff in, but I have been lately. So one of the things that I kind of tried to get, my kids have really been into like the Star Wars Clone Wars animated series, and they loved it. They've watched all 7 seasons and everything. They're constantly telling me I should watch it, and so I started watching some of it. But when Bad Batch came out a year ago, I kind of jumped into that when it did, and so this week I kind of caught up on the latest of season 2 of Bad Batch, and that's been a lot of fun to watch. It focuses a lot on kind of the aftermath of Order 66, right? And it specifically follows like the Bad Batch, which was introduced, I guess, in the Clone Wars. And I'm still trying to catch up on all of that stuff, and someday I will. But it's been a lot of fun to see kind of the Bad Batch and what they're doing, how they're surviving. Because I don't know how familiar you guys are with the Bad Batch, but they're basically a bunch of like defect clones, right? And so because they were defect clones, they're like a little weird. They're a little different than the other clones, and they weren't affected, or they weren't affected by Order 66. So they didn't pull the trigger, right, kind of thing. And so now Bad Batch is essentially a story, the story of how they're trying to survive in a post Order 66 world where they're no longer part of the Empire, and how they're surviving and stuff. And it's interesting to see kind of you see little bits and pieces of what's changing with the Empire. And for example, one of the things that they've talked about is how clones are being replaced and stormtroopers are coming in and things like that. And so it's been fascinating. So I've enjoyed that. I'm caught up. I wouldn't watch that with my kids. The other thing I did this week actually started today. Me and my kids have played through Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle Earth, the first campaign. We finished that a while ago, and then kind of put it on the shelf. But I was like, hey, you guys want to start the next campaign? And so we did that. We started the second campaign that came out with the game Hunt for the Ember Crown. We just played through the first scenario today, but it's been a lot of fun. We decided to play, even though it's just 3 of us, we decided to do 5 characters. So we're running a couple characters thing, so we could get the full effect of a full party. But that game's been a lot of fun.
This is the digital one, right?
Yeah, it's run by the digital app. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Do you have the miniatures? It's got pretty good miniatures too, right?
Yeah, it does. I've got all the expansions and everything. There was 2 major expansions plus a couple of miniature packs for some of the baddies. And there's 6 total campaigns that have been released for it. I've only played obviously a couple of them, but it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Have you painted any of the miniatures for it or no?
Say again?
Have you painted the miniatures or no?
No, I I am not a painter at this moment in time, so I have not attempted that.
Well, you've done a Legion army.
I attempted a unit, or put that way. I have like a half-finished stormtrooper unit that I've done.
It was Journeys in Middle Earth that got me into painting because I just couldn't handle those guys being unpainted. And now I look at my paint jobs on them and I want to repaint a lot of them.
That's what I'm afraid of.
I've already
that's a whole other thing,
but
right?
that's okay. I just used it as my laboratory because I'm like, this game is better with them painted than with them gray, just because it's just Middle Earth. It doesn't look as plasticky.
Yeah, that's my ultimate goal, is to try and get to the point where I feel comfortable starting to do that, but I'm not quite there yet.
The day will come, John. I have faith in you.
I think a campaign game where you're sticking with a couple of characters is a great way to jump in, because you can just focus on painting those two guys, right?
Yeah.
And then paint them as you play them. And anyways, we're all encouraging you, John.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I hear that.
Yeah, I've only painted one board games of miniatures myself, and that was my Deep Madness. And I started by painting all the monsters, and then after I painted all the monsters, I was like, wait a minute, models that are painted roll better than models that aren't. I haven't painted any of the character models.
You're doomed.
I'm doomed.
Yeah.
The dolly.
Yeah, so I had to go back and paint them too. But yeah, cool. All right, John. Thanks, man. Lincoln, what about you, man? How's your week?
So I've been I'm playing Frostgrave with a local guy here at Huzzah on Tuesdays. And Frostgrave's a game I played maybe like 8 years ago at Adepticon, and just had a really great time doing it. Those of you that aren't familiar with Frostgrave, it's sort of like a D&D tabletop miniatures game, if you will, where each player plays a wizard, and you select a school of magic. You have an apprentice. And then there's treasures on the board. You build a war band with 8 other miniatures. So every player has 10 miniatures total. You have a war band with 2 wizards. And you cast magic spells at each other. Some different schools of magic. Some you're good at. Some you're not so good at. You start with 8 spells. And you can unlock grimoires as you're playing. It's just a ton of fun. And it plays on a miniatures table, like a 3x3. And you're not allowed to have more than 12 inches of free line of sight. So there's lots of terrain, lots of trees, lots of buildings. It's very Mordheim-esque. It's a really cool game. So I've been playing that on Tuesdays now regularly. And then I'm building some Stormcast. My AOS for ITC competitive play this year is going to be focused on Stormcast and my dwarfs. So dwarfs should be Cities of Sigmar and also the Fire Slayers. So I've been building some Vanguard Paladors, which are some mounted Stormcast models that throw javelins. So I've been building those this week.
Interesting.
And then I played a little bit of Warcry with Justin and got my butt kicked on Saturday before our Aliens game. It's actually a really close game, but just can't beat that guy.
Yeah,
he's getting ready for Adepticon. He's sharpening his axe.
Was he playing his list that he wants to take to Adepticon?
I'm not sure. He was playing Untamed Beast. I'm not sure what he's taking.
I don't think that's his list. Yeah.
He wasn't playing real hard mode on me. It was just, I had 2 chances to win. And I couldn't roll what I needed to pull it off both times. So.
Yeah. We started doing a Tabletop and Beyond. We started hosting a Warcry night at Huzzah Hobbies in Virginia every other Monday. And it started to grow. We've got a few more people that show up, I feel like, every week. So hopefully we'll keep that going. I remember there used to be an AOS night there before kind of COVID kind of slowed everything down.
Yeah. So
obviously there's always 40K.
Wednesday nights.
Yeah.
They still play a lot on Wednesday nights.
Yeah, AOS on Wednesday nights.
AOS Wednesday nights, AOS and 40K, but there's usually 2 or 3 tables at least of some AOS going on too.
Nice, cool.
Stuff.
Yeah, well, my Geek Week, I traveled a lot this week for work. Been traveling a lot for work, but was still able to work in an Aliens RPG. And man, I was cramming for that RPG too. I was like everywhere. I was like sitting in the car at my daughter's volleyball practice, like, reading and like writing things down, but I was able to squeeze it in. And we had a nice, gosh, man, it probably, we all start, you know how it is, everybody gets together around 6 and you don't really probably start playing until 6:40 really, because everyone's shooting the breeze and catching up. Right. And we played till like 12:30, right? Yeah, we did. That night we just pushed through because we crammed 2 acts down into one session, but it was fun. But we'll get to that when we get to our main topic. But before we do that, let's slide over into our next segment.
Welcome to Tabletop and Beyond News.
That was really well done.
Oh, trying. It's only taken me 100 episodes to get to a well done.
You've moved the needle just a hair.
Yeah, it's
I like the head bobbing though. I think that gives
a lot. It was lost when we were doing MP3 only podcast.
That head bopping was still happening.
Yeah, it was all here. It was. I was.
If you listen real closely, you can kind of hear it.
Yeah, you could hear my pompadour hit the microphone. That's for sure. Hot on the heels of the post OGL news, we do have a company called Demiplane who will be putting out a digital platform for third-party publishers for 5e. So it'll be like a full digital tool set is what they're going for, something very similar to D&D and Beyond for folks who are no longer directly using Wizards of the Coast tool sets. So they're going to come out, it's going to come out in 3 different phases or stages. Stage 1 is the pre-launch. It'll help, put together your group and just some basic group connection stuff. Stage 2, they're going to have advanced digital tools for game books and multiple independent publishers. So if there's an independent publisher who's putting out really great 5th edition stuff, and if they put their things on Demiplane, you will have access to those digital books in that way. And the stage 3, which is coming a little later down the pike, that will have an independent character creator component. And you'll be able to plug in your third-party game books to create your own special version of your 5e character. And so, what Demiplane, their goal is to really create a digital intermediary place that will allow the third-party publishers to have a similar experience to those folks who have been used to playing D&D Beyond in the third-party space. So kudos to them. It looks like they're going to be mobile enabled and very app enabled. So folks who love 5th edition and can't wait to jump on board with their different third-party publishers will won't be left in the cold when it comes to a digital home for your stuff.
Yeah.
Demiplane has partners with the Avatar Legends game, Pathfinder, Marvel multi-universe role-playing game, Vampire the Masquerade, Hunter, Alien, and Mutant. So this is not just a one-off thing that's designed to just focus on the 5th edition independent publishers, but there are other publishers who are also using the Demiplane tool sets. So pretty cool. Good for them, and we wish them all the best.
Yeah, this will be, I love books and physical things in my hand, but I have softened my heart a little bit when we did the Rime of the Frost Maiden campaign completely online using D&D Beyond. It did soften my heart towards digital tools for role-playing games, for sure.
I really, really enjoy D&D Beyond, actually. I know not everybody's a fan, but I really am a fan of it. Yeah, it's great. Yeah,
just the concept, and forget about the company, but just for the concept of having all of that information and material extremely accessible to access the game kind of in real time. That was nice.
Right. Yeah.
Our second item of news is Homeworld. I don't know if you all remember the real-time strategy space combat armada scale game called Homeworld from the early 2000s. They have a Kickstarter out on, they have a Kickstarter for a board game out that's being published by Modifius, who I have a soft spot for. They have great Modifius products that I'm looking at on my shelf right now. The point of this, once again, it's another fleet-based battle game. It's going to be mission-oriented, much like the video game. And much like the video game, it looks like it's going to be very fast-paced, very easy ways to keep track of your damage and which ships are doing well and who's dead and who's alive and stuff like that. I've walked through the online tutorial a few times, and my life is full, gentlemen, full of tabletop fleet-based space games. And man, I'm still my eyes are lingering at that at that Kickstarter because I would have gotten a higher GPA in grad school had Homeworld never come out. But,
oh, dude, Homeworld was such a gorgeous game too, man. The vistas and just beautiful
the sound,
games.
if you had
So
a
fun.
decent sound system, it was mind-blowingly good.
Yeah,
So,
I remember the first time I was exposed to Homeworld, I was actually traveling for an early job and had a work computer. And I was like, dude, I want something to do on this like really long plane. I was traveling across country. So I downloaded the Homeworld like demo, which lets you play like 3 battles. And I just played those 3 battles over and over again for like 5 hours on the plane. Right. It was just so much fun.
there was some charm about that game. I've never played anyone that specifically that has felt like Homeworld since then. But there's a board game now, and it looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. Like all Kickstarters, there's lots of expansions, and of course, if the higher you go, the more little plastic spaceships you'll have. I don't think if I bought these, I would paint them because I think the plastic and color kind of goes to the aesthetic. In fact, but I'm very interested. There's about 12 days left on the Kickstarter, and I'll get down to the last 48 hours. I'll start getting the Kickstarter sweat. It's like you get the meat sweats, when you've had too much steak. You're like, I don't know if I can live without this. I don't know if I can live without this. So I think it's great. So it's cool to see a property that is getting a lot of love and attention. They are going to work on doing, since Modifius also owns the role-playing game for Homeworld, I think they're working on some sinew products between the two, between the board game and the role-playing game. And frankly, it would be hard to play the role-playing game without millions of little spaceships, if it's anything like the original video game. So that's Homeworld. It's on Kickstarter. And I got an itchy trigger finger when it comes to certain things, and that one, the Siren Song of Homeworld, is calling my name.
You do have a lot of kind of fleet-based space games. Then I think about it.
So many. I've got battle stations. I got X-wing. Just too many. I have too many, but still, there's still one more I don't have.
Yes, it's like ice cream. There's always room for more.
I feel you, Dan. I'm that way with like Civ type games. I love Civ games.
Yeah, you don't feel like they're yours until you have them in your own hands. So, well, keeping it real light on the news. Those are 2 topics. They aren't all RPG based. I'm trying not to do 100% RPG news. I'm doing the best I can to have more balance. And Justin's not here to tell us whatever's going on with Games Workshop.
With Games Workshop, yes. Because he always weasels one in there. Yeah, no matter what the topic is.
We have wonderful Games Workshop listeners to this podcast. I say hello
Absolutely.
to all of them, and we're grateful to have them. And I've become a Games Workshop buyer, and I've got stuff now, so I'm.
We're all fans.
Yeah.
We're all fans. Yeah. Looks like Lincoln had a little bit of technical difficulties. Hopefully we'll get him back in here in a little bit in the show. But for now, we'll push forward. Is that it for news, Dan?
That's it for the news.
All right, man. Here we go. Let's jump to our main topic. So main topic was Aliens RPG from Free League Publishing. So let me just do a little bit of an introduction here. I'm going to share my screen again. Let me pull up the right window here. Okay. And we'll just close that. So Free League is a company that we talk about a lot, right? We love them not only because they make really awesome content, but they also have beautiful artwork that goes along with their game systems. They have lots of games up right now. Some of them that you may have heard of, maybe not in game form, is Tales from the Loop, which turned into an Amazon, right? It was Amazon Prime series, which is based off of an art book. They took an art book from an artist, and I think a Norwegian artist. It was either Norwegian. Yeah, I think it was Norwegian, and turned it into a game, and then that made its way into a television series. They've done some 5e stuff with Lord of the Rings, Twilight 2000. Borg, a lot of people familiar with that, has kind of an indie feel. The Alien one, which we're going to talk about, I'm just going to let their banner swipe for us, right? It does the work here. But anyways, lot of really cool stuff that they've done. And one of their most recent ones, which has gotten a lot right there, is the Blade Runner RPG. And that's another one, John and Dan, that we've got to throw down on the table, right? So I think several of us actually have bought into that, went into that Kickstarter, and have the books and the even the starter. We probably have 3 or 4 starter sets.
The Kickstarter, but I haven't gotten my book yet.
Oh, really? Oh, dude,
I gotta reach out to our contact. I feel like a schmo.
I think
I
something
might
might have
just buy
happened
it
there.
twice. I might just buy it twice because I feel terrible about it.
Dude, I would just reach out, man. But yeah,
reach out.
I mean, I got they were kind of the fulfillment for that was a little wonky. Like, people were getting it kind of all over the place. I had people that were just down the street from me that got it like a month before I did. So
I never got the email inviting me to the backer kit.
Oh,
Interesting.
Well, interesting. That might be why you didn't get your book.
Maybe.
Anyways, something for you to work there on the side.
If it doesn't, they can have my money. I like those guys enough. I like them enough. They can just have my money.
Yeah.
If I don't get off my own keister and get a hold of the thing I actually paid money for, I'm literally helping them kickstart. I'm GoFunding them, you know.
It's good stuff. But the one that we're going to talk about tonight is Alien, the role-playing game. And this one actually has its own, if you come here and go to Alien, this one actually has its own website that you go to. And we'll pull that up here in just a second. But one of the things I wanted to show here right at the beginning is just kind of a little bit of the quality that these guys provide to their community. So if I click the Free League Alien, and then I go to the downloads, you can see some of the stuff that's available here for you to download. And I wanted to click on some of these maps so you can get the feel here. So let's click on Hadley's Hope, right, which is the famous settlement from LV-246, right, from the Alien and Aliens movie, right?
It's Newt's house.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Newt. But if you look here, just the aesthetic, right? Like, they did such a good job capturing what you would feel when you watch those movies, right? It's supposed to be like the sci-fi, the 80s science fiction future, right? So it's those old, the old keyboards and the terminals, and before they really had a conception of what we have as modern technology today. And all of the maps that come in these sets are really, really high quality that you can throw down on the table. And John, I mean, you were there, right? Like, what was your impression of like the quality of the actual material that was there for us?
Well, I like it a lot. I actually have the starter set, so I have one of those maps that comes in there, and I mean, it's pretty thick paper, right? It's not like a flimsy little. It doesn't feel like it's going to easily rip or anything. So just the material itself feels very good and very thick in comparison to some other stuff that I've had in the past. And then again, like you said, the aesthetics is really cool looking. It definitely feels like it fits in the Alien universe, right? And it kind of gives you that vibe going in to kind of help set the mood and the setting.
Yeah, here I'm going to hold it up to my camera so you can just kind of see. This is a nice. Let's see. There we go. A nice, map of that I could just throw on the table, and the players could see this. And I mean, they really did, right? They were standing over the table, had their fingers on the blueprint. They're like, well, if we take this alley, it'll take us back here. We can go through this fuel tank, and there's, it looks like maybe there's a service hatch over there. So they really got that feeling of, man, we've got to find a way to crawl through this place to avoid like all of the nasties that are around us. So I think, they're really this company is really committed to making material and content that captures that immersion for their players there. But the one that we played was called Heart of Darkness is the one that they just came out with. The one that we played is actually called, let's see if they have it here, Destroyer of Worlds. So that's a cinematic module. And that's what we played, and we'll dive into that. But before we do, let's talk a little bit about maybe what sets sets this system apart from something like a 5e or just a standard, like D20 style system there. So what, I don't know, Dan, if you have, you've obviously played lots of different systems over the time. You've been playing role-playing games since before really polyhedral dice were involved in them, right?
No, we had them, but they were a lot harder to come by. Let's just say that what you got in your D&D box had to last you throughout a lot of games.
Yeah, and this one is it is a D6 system, right? It is not a D20 based system. And I think a lot of people maybe when they first hear that think, wait, role playing without a D20? And I think
hey, D6 systems. That was my first system in 1988. It was a D6 only system, so it's been around a few decades.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day when Dungeons and Dragons was first coming out, sure, like the D6s is what you would yank the dice out of your Monopoly box, right, to apply it to a much better purpose. But just it's so much more accessible for a lot of people. So on one hand, I think it was fun to go back to a system for a little bit that was just using that base dice that we grew up with as little kids. But so, John, what are your thoughts on how this system worked versus a normal D20 system?
So it's interesting having played D&D for most of my RPG career, so to speak, or life. I hadn't played a ton of other systems until the last couple of years. But I think actually this is the first time in a while that I've been back to like a straight up D6 system. But it was interesting. And one of the things that I liked about it was the fact that one, not only is it just D6, so I just have to make sure I have a bunch of D6, but any kind of modifiers you get during the game, whether it be a -2, +2, things like that, really it just meant it's that many less or more dice that you roll for a skill check or whatever that you're doing. And so it was pretty easy once you kind of realize, okay, so I'm a -2 now for the next round on this. Okay, well, I just take out 2 dice, right? Or I get a +2 because I'm aiming, right? Okay, that means, instead of having to like, all right, I roll, figure it out, and then add +2 to that, right? And so it was much simpler, I think. A lot less math involved. You just had to roll the dice, and then you're just looking for a symbol, right? You're just looking for a 6. As long as you get a 6, you're good, right? Like that's all you needed. So I thought it was pretty. It was, for me at least, it was much simpler, and kind of a nice change of pace compared to what the D20 systems that I'm used to.
Yeah. So just to summarize there, right? So as you can see, I pulled up the starter box set. It as a lot of games do come with kind of themed dice, but at the end of the day, they're just D6s, right? With like a symbol on either the 6 or symbol on the 1. When you roll for a skill, you look and you add up your attribute and the skill and to put both those numbers together, and that's just how many D6 you roll. So if you have a 3 in wit, and a 2 in observation, 3 + 2 is 5. So you just roll 5d6. And you're just looking for a single 6, right? So if you get 1 6, you have succeeded. Any additional 6s do things called stunts, which means you get a little bit more information. And that's you kind of work with the GM on that. In combat, it's much easier. You can use stunts to just add an additional point of damage or do fun story stuff like maybe I shoot the pistol out of his hand, and you can use the extra stunts to do just that, stunts, right? But you just got to get that 1d6 to succeed. So John, let me ask you a question. Do you having played D&D or D20 systems for most of your gaming life, do you feel that the simplification kind of did it have a negative or a positive effect on your experience in immersion and role playing?
Just in role playing in general, I don't think it really. I would say it didn't really change that for me. What I do like specifically about this system was the stress dice, and we haven't really talked about that yet. But I felt like that really helped me with the immersion of the feel of what Alien is, or what I think Alien is.
Yeah. So if you look over here, I'm kind of moving the picture a little bit, but that's not what I wanted to do. There you go. Over here on the left side, you get the black dice, and those ship with the original box, and they just have a nice little like target reticle on the 6, which means I got a success. Over here on the right, you get these yellow, which also have a target reticle on the 6 because the 6 is a success. But they also have a face hugger symbol on the 1. And whenever you roll a skill check, you have to look at how much stress does my character currently have, and you measure stress in little like points, like tick boxes. And if you have 2 stress, you throw in 2 additional stress dice in that skill roll. So like in the example I gave you before, where if I had, let's say, a wit of 3 and an observation of 2, and the GM said, or they don't call them GMs, sorry, they call them mothers. If the mother actually said, you need to give me an observation roll, I would add those 2 numbers together. But then if my character had 2 stress, just because of, how the situation's been going, I throw 2 yellow die in as well. So I actually have a greater chance to get success because I'm throwing more dice that can give me a 6. But those 2 yellow dice can also potentially throw a 1, which is the face hugger. And if they throw a 1, then you have to roll on a panic table because it's like, oh, something got to me in that situation. So as you play the game and you get lots of stress is coming in left and right in this game. You start to build that stress pool, and so it starts to make the panic rolls a lot more meaningful as the game goes on. So I thought that was a really cool. Another system we played that's kind of like this is Shadow of the Demon Lord, which has Banes and Boons. Where you throw a D6 in or throw a good D6 in or throw a bad D6 in, depending on whether you have a Bane or a Boon. So kind of that simple math that's there. Dan, what are your thoughts on this kind of a system so far?
They're great for quick action, and I think Alien is a really good fit for that. It lends itself to not getting tripped up in too many feats and talents and different things that suspend the rules too quickly. It's more like, hey, we have to do this thing right now. I think that the game system can really add to a sense of urgency, and having pretty much a D6, which is kind of like 1980s dice, quite frankly. That's the the 1980s movie. There's something about that has the right kind of feel. Quick and dirty when you're trying to maintain the sense of urgency and fear, the system can't get in the way where everybody's kind of rule lawyering and book diving and going, well, in this situation, I think, such and such would apply. That can be the death of a role-playing game.
Yeah, to a counterpoint, though, that I think you probably are thinking of too, is that it is great for quick and dirty. Make sure the system doesn't get in the way of fast combat and action. But if you are playing and to be fair, we only play this in kind of a fast play mode, which is a cinematic mode. There is a campaign version of the game where you play a longer game that has more leveling and that kind of stuff. And I cannot have any experience with it, but I'd be curious on if you might start to feel limited in your ability to kind of tweak your character over time.
That's usually where those games struggle.
Yeah.
Right. There's some games that have enough design space and headroom for the characters to grow and to have the game mechanics reflect unique character growth and character power curve growth. Sometimes when you jump into these, like, you should clearly make a direct comparison to the Aliens role-playing game to Mothership. I mean,
totally.
Frankly, you would have a very similar, and the way that the games are laid out, quite frankly, is similar in some very substantive ways, which Mothership wants you to don't fuss about your character creation. Just get in. That character may die. You may need another one. Quick, grab 2, grab 3. Let's play. With Mothership, Aliens probably is a little bit more nuanced from what I can see by going over the materials, even though I haven't played. What are your thoughts?
I think it is. Mothership is definitely just get in there, play, have fun. they both follow the same theme, and they both say this in their books, right? So then the Alien rule book, in the Mothership rule book, which is Mothership is more of an indie publisher, so it's really like a zine style, like a stapled booklet kind of a thing, right? Both of them say very much in there, don't roll if you don't have to roll, right? It's not about rolling the dice if you don't have to roll it. Don't just make your players roll the dice just to roll the dice, right? Because and fail forward. They're all about failing forward. If there's a failure, move the story forward. It doesn't matter. I would say though that aliens, it at least in the campaign mode, which we played in, it plays, I think, just as fast as Mothership. I think it plays just as deadly, if not actually deadlier, when you get to the xenomorphs. I think the xenomorphs are incredibly deadly in this game. I think the aliens and the monstrosities that are in Mothership are also very deadly, but I think the overlord or the mother or whatever you want to call has a little more freedom in how they control the monstrosities in Mothership, where in Aliens there's kind of an, obviously behind the GM screen or behind the screen you can do whatever you want, but if you kind of play the system, there's kind of an AI that those xenomorphs are driven against, and really the only choice that the mother has, if you want to stay true to the system, is to really kind of choose which character the alien's going after. But once you choose which character the alien's going after, there's actually a D6 table you roll on that says what the alien is going to do to that character at that given time. But I'm getting a little off of what you were asking there. I think that both systems are meant to play really fast. They're meant not to get in the way. I have never played Mothership where anyone has really survived past one setting. Aliens hasn't gone too much further beyond that, but that's the type of GM I am. I'm a horror GM where I want everyone to have an epic conclusion, and it may be an epic, horrible conclusion, but it's going to be epic, right? So I'd be curious to try this in a longer play.
That would be my number one question as somebody who is very interested in playing this game and maybe usually when I'm interested in a game like this, I end up buying it, right? Which is, am I buying a hardbound book or a starter kit? If I'm buying the hardbound book, am I going to have the same character for 3 or 4 or 5 episodes?
Yeah.
And is the jury out on that? I mean, you guys have played it. What do you think?
What do you think, John?
Yeah, so my take on that would be it really would depend on, and so Jason kind of mentioned earlier that there's 2 kind of ways you can play this game, right? There's the cinematic mode, which is what we've been playing. And those are really kind of short, kind of 3-act kind of stories meant to kind of mimic the flow of like the films, right? Really meant to be, kind of have a start and a finish. It may or may not be finished in a single session, right? It might take a couple sessions to finish. I think this one that we did, Jason, it took us a total of 2 sessions to get through the 3 acts, right?
Yeah.
And so you can kind of think about it as a 1-shot, 2-shot kind of thing, right? But it's very cinematic. You're playing set characters. You're not making your own in that sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus campaign mode where you are rolling your own character, right? And it's meant to be a longer, kind of like a traditional campaign kind of thing where you are going through multiple sessions and you're taking your character through that progression. Now, I don't have any experience with that mode of play in the system.
Yeah.
So I am curious, having played the cinematic one, and we'll talk, I'm sure, more about it later, but I am very curious to know and to look into how character progression works, when you make your own, and what that looks like, and does it feel satisfying, and does it fit?
Yeah.
And I think what you get in a role playing game like this, which you don't get in Mothership because it's zine style, is you get all of the lore that goes along with how many films are we up to? 6 films, and who knows how many other novels and other media. So it's a really deep well. If you want to do more complex stories that tie in Prometheus you could really get into some head teaser stuff that could be just as complex as playing the Dune RPG, quite frankly, because Dune really doesn't have that many movies to sit down and watch.
Yeah.
Like you could watch all the Aliens movies, and then as a mother or a GM rather, come up with a really interesting take. Well, what happened with that thing off in the background? Boy, there's a whole adventure there. Let's try that out, you know?
Yeah, look at this is I'll hold it up to the camera, right? So this is the rule book that comes with the starter set, right?
Yeah.
This big hardback one is the one you can buy that
Is the
has
thing.
and this has all the rules. The entire rest of this big fat book is lore.
Is the lore.
Is lore. It is
Yeah.
awesome. I mean, I sat there for days at night before bed just reading that thing, right? And then rewatching the movies and being like, I know what that's about now, you know? And I tell you this though, I used to have a really big, and we had a show, well, it's probably been a year ago now, and John, I think you were on that show with us where we talked about all our aliens movies. I don't know, maybe it wasn't you, John. I think we did
I
have a
wasn't on
guest.
that one, but I
It
do
was
remember it.
It was yeah, I think it was another fan we had on though, but we talked through all the Alien movies, we rated them in order, and I've had problems with Alien Covenant, but when I read this book, it softened. I say this again, it softened my heart towards Alien Covenant. I think the people in Alien Covenant are still imbeciles, right? They're just idiots, but what was happening with like the black goo and how it was atomized in the air, you know, and the fungus aspects of it, you know, and that stuff is all like there's a lot of explanation about why that is inside of this rule book. So if you even if you aren't going to play the role playing game, you don't have a group that's there, but you love the Alien franchise, this rule book is chock full of beautiful, gorgeous art and lore that just kind of it's the peanut butter and jelly in between the two, you know, slices of bread that are the movies. So it's good stuff. But I wanted to jump in real quick to show this character sheet so you can see this is kind of the default character sheet that comes. So you have just 4 attributes on this diamond here, or what are they called, rhombuses in real life or something like that, right? Anyways, strength, agility, empathy, and wits. I'll zoom in just a little bit more here, but this is like what I was saying. So you're going to have some base numbers in here that when you do a skill check, you just say, all right, what skill am I using and which attribute is that attached to, which is very familiar to most role-playing games. You know, there's an attribute that defines how well you do at a skill, and the skill is like specialized training with that attribute. Yeah. And I thought that worked really well. I would say that most people use the close combat, they use the range combat, the mobility, and the observation. We didn't really use a lot of the others except in very special situations, but I think those were the ones that were really made. So it really was just kind of a cinematic run and gun style of a feel at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But you know, it's true to what it was trying to be there. So you get a lot for these inside of these things. But let's talk more about the actual types of play. We talked about the campaign style, which is long, which we don't have a lot of experience in. You can they call it a space truckers campaign, where you're just out there on the fringes trying to survive. There's a colonial marines campaign where you're actual soldier, and there's a separate book for running campaigns in there, right? And then there are a few others. But to your point, Dan, that you've been hitting on, I think it's valid that this system might play really well for cinematic, and I'm not sure if someone is used to like really tweaking a character over time. I'm not sure if they'll get that with this, but it's something we'll have to explore.
And not every game has to do that. I mean, just because D&D you can play a character for 2 or 3 years, who cares? I mean, that's not it. That doesn't mean that every game has to be held to that standard.
Yeah. I will say one thing though, if you're playing aliens to really experience the aliens, like the xenomorphs, the face huggers, the chest bursters, the body bursters, like, you know, the neomorphs, the black goo, the freaks, all that stuff, then you want to play cinematic. Because campaign is meant to emulate more of like what a normal person's life is in this universe, which means the aliens really don't show up that much. Like, in fact, it says in the book that sometimes you may in campaign mode, you may not see a xenomorph for like several sessions, and then you'll just get hints about something funny that's happening. So it's
Well, and back to your comment, Jason, the
different, yeah.
xenomorphs and stuff are very deadly in this game, right? And
They
so
are, yeah.
in a campaign mode, well, whether campaign or cinematic, once you come up against those xenomorphs, there's a high chance that somebody's going to not walk out of there.
Yeah.
And if you're playing a long campaign, that may or may not be what you want.
Yeah.
That raises an interesting question. And let's draw a parallel between the xenomorphs and, let's say, the Sith in Star Wars. I know, Jason, you're cringing. You're just but basically, you have a piece of lore that the lore is so specific.
Yeah.
And everybody knows what happens when that bad guy shows up and how dangerous that bad guy is and how everybody's lives are in danger. Does that kind of does matching the lore put its thumb on the scales of game balance? Like, are the xenomorphs just too tough? Do they chew you up and spit you out? Are the game rules designed around to make sure the xenomorphs are the biggest, baddest, deadliest threat in the universe?
Yeah, I think that it is absolutely designed for the xenomorphs to be extremely the biggest, the baddest threat that's there in front of you, and it's designed to teach the players a really hard lesson really fast. And it actually,
which is run, right? Run.
Yeah, which is run. And you get players that can, oh yeah, all right, here we go, lock and load, and then the thing like closes the distance across 2 zones to them in one move, and just happens to roll on the table the fatal on the 6 that says, it picks you up and bashes your head in. He's like, whoa. It's like
game over, man. Game over,
man. And then you give them a new sheet and you say, okay, let's try this again next time. So yeah, and that's where I think good question. But that's why
it's not a knock, because when you sit down to play the Alien game, that it should feel right.
And you need to have a mother that I think can pull punches to read the room and make sure. The whole point of playing these games, as we talk about in all systems, is to have fun and tell a really cool story, right? It's not just you're not actually playing a game going for a high score here.
Yeah.
So pull punches. You can there's 2 modes. I'm not going to jump too much into it, but there's 2 modes of kind of combat. There's like the hunting mode, and then there's the combat mode. It's called the passive and the active side, or the hunting. So in the hunting one, you're actually while the players are moving through an area, you as the mother, or as we'll just say the game master, the game master, you're controlling the aliens without them knowing, and the aliens are hunting them. And so you can kind of toy with the players a little bit. So you have some freedom there to gauge the player's ability to understand the universe they're in, understand danger, and kind of help the players learn a little bit about danger before you just, have all the vents open and 5 xenomorph soldiers drop into the room. It takes some good GMing to make sure that happens right.
It feels like if you want an Alien board game or an Alien tabletop miniature game, those are out there for you.
Yeah.
You just want to get in and say, this is how it feels to be in combat for 3 hours, do it. But what you're getting here is more like the beats of the horror story, the horror component of the horror sci-fi, which Justin has talked about a lot, where you ramp up and then you let everybody catch their breath, and then you ramp up, but you're on a slow incline to a major climax.
Yeah. What did you think, John, about the about the pacing? Did you feel that the way we played and the system had a pacing such that it felt very kind of true to the franchise?
I thought it did. I really liked kind of the pacing. There were moments for sure where it was like, felt like crap was hitting the fan, right? And are we going to make it out of here? But then, things would kind of settle down a little bit, or we feel like we kind of we're in a safe spot. We closed the door behind us, gave us a few minutes of breathing room before we had to kind of, move on or whatever. But kind of, I just want to make a comment about the deadliness of the xenomorphs, right? At least based on the experience of this cinematic play that we went through. I feel like, and this, for you, Dan, one-on-one with a character, like they are super deadly, right? Like as Jason said, and it depends on what they roll and what they decide to do to you, right? Maybe they're just going to come toy with you, right? Maybe they're going to like do the fatal and like, stick their mouth through your head, right? Um, but when in a group, like if you've got a group of 4 or 5 characters, you can take them down. They're not impossible to kill,
Yeah.
right? But that's also a risk when you're doing that, because if they're within like engage range and you start shooting holes in them, you start getting acid down your shirt or on your face or whatever, and that does some whole nother stuff to you, right? So there's lots of risks, and so it's definitely one of those things where if you're just going to run and gun into there, you're probably not going to survive too long, right?
Yeah, we actually, Justin, who's not with us tonight, but we had a situation where his character actually met their demise because of the acid splash of the xenomorph. So this drone, which the drones, the xenomorph drones, which is probably not what you see here, but the drones are a stage of the evolution. Xenomorphs have a very fast evolution, right? And the drone is a stage which is before they've joined the hive. So they've kind of grown up a little bit. So they're kind of teenagers, maybe, if you think of it that way. But they haven't quite joined the hive mind yet. Like they're not controlled by the queen, but they're still driven by their instincts to kind of, go out there, harvest people, bring them over so they can get implanted and that kind of stuff. But Justin had this drone right in front of him. And I rolled, luckily for him, he was right in engaged range with it. He was like trying to hit it with a flamethrower. And I rolled, luckily for him, the one where it kind of plays with its prey. And in this one, it stood up. It stood up like a full 2.5 meters tall in front of him. So he's down this hallway. He's leading everyone in this hallway. And so everyone sees his back, and then sees this xenomorph's head just kind of slowly rise above his. And he's standing like right there, like, and he rolls for panic, and he's just standing there, right? So you think, okay, he's going to survive another round. Well, one of the other players says, "Oh my gosh!" He runs down. Yeah, John runs down the hall, and with his smart gun, just lays into this thing, like awesome shot, like massive amount of damage. Well, Justin is right in front of this thing, so all of that massive damage just acid splashed onto Justin, and it gave him a fatal critical injury. It like ate through his hazmat suit. I mean, we were rolling dice trying to stop it, but we couldn't, man. That acid went all the way through it. It ate through an artery, and and like metal was disintegrating, and he basically bled out like in a turn. It was like,
yeah, there
it
was
was
like
one of
nothing we could do about it.
Nothing you could do, just because of the priority order, right? Like he
Yeah.
had already gone. Everyone else, only one other person could come, and they staunched the blood, but they couldn't be there to help him, give him medical aid to help with his death save. Because if you're broken, if your health goes to 0, you're considered broken. If you're broken and you have a fatal critical injury, you have to do 2 saves to stay alive. And there wasn't anyone else there in the round to help him. And he failed it. He failed the save. He wasn't able to get the success. So yeah, that acid did a massive number of damage on people there at the end. And
there was a few.
Yeah. We had some pretty fun situations. I think at one point, John, you had like a broken leg and
a broken arm, yeah.
And a broken arm, and you were like leaning against someone. They were dragging you down the hall while you were holding your smart gun, like firing. It was
I was pretty sure at that point I was not going to make it out of here alive.
Yeah. Well, and you didn't.
And I didn't.
You
didn't.
But you had a pretty epic conclusion, right? You were sitting on the. I think you were sitting on the ground watching a xenomorph just rip Lincoln's character to shreds.
Yeah.
Who was an android in front of you.
Who character-wise, his character was like my buddy,
yeah.
Right? And so I was watching my buddy get torn up by this thing. Meanwhile, the other 2 characters said, "We're out of here,"
and they just left.
Screw you, they left me, right? And I was like, what? All right. Well, you're not leaving without me. So I crawled over to like the door of the elevator and stuck myself and my smart gun in the door so that it couldn't close, so that the elevator couldn't leave without me.
So they went up to an upper level to try to call the elevator up off of that floor, and John put a smart gun in so the elevator door wouldn't shut and leave without him. This is the fun story that just develops, right? As all these players are at their wits' end, like trying to get out of this place.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, everybody was like, I think we were down to like 3 characters or something, and everybody was like, everybody for themselves.
I'll tell you this about the system, though: it is so easy to just get someone rolled in. Like somebody died.
Oh yeah.
All I did, you're not gonna be able to see it, but I'm just gonna show you. Get these little character cards, right? And they have the entire stat block on the back, right? I'm not gonna try to have you read it, but just see in this, I give them that, and I give them a gun card that has the stats of the gun on the back. I give them these 2 cards, and I whisper in their ear a little bit, and all of a sudden they're back in the game and they're playing. And I did that with I think 2 people by the end had done that. Like I gave them, one of them was like a Wayland Yutani officer, so all of a sudden their role completely switched. Now they were like kind of thwarting the players a little bit. So it really means people can keep playing the game really easy. It's built to do that. So a lot of fun.
There are expectations of player death. It's not a big deal, and you're going to be right back in with a side character is going to be your character, and that will no longer be a side character. Is that explicit in the rules, or is that something that you did as the GM?
So obviously, most of these Mothership, Shadow of the Demon Lord, these lethal games, they all say find a way to roll someone in real quick if they die. I mean, if it's the end of the night, do what you want. But if they die like an hour into your session, get them another sheet somehow real quick. So yeah. I think they built these games. These cards were actually for the GM, so that if like the players wanted to have a social interaction or they wanted to have a combat with an NPC, I could flip the card on the back real quick and say, okay, this person, which is Eckfert, she was a Wayland Yutani officer. It says her strength is 4, her close combat is 2. Okay, so I know how to handle that situation really quickly. And she's holding, and her ranged combat is 3, and she's holding a M41A pulse rifle, which has these stats. So I could play really quick. But at the same time, when the player died, I just handed him these cards, and now he's playing again. His role shifted a little bit, but he's able to just quick playing real quick. And I would only do that if it was like where we were. We were late in the game, or we were near the end of maybe an arc. So they don't really care about leveling up. It's really just more about playing, role playing and playing. That's not going to be the character that they probably continue with, or if so, then we'll give them a character sheet and they'll take those stats and jot them down and go from there. But real easy to jump back into the game. All right, let's do some final thoughts here. True to the franchise. Now, this franchise has a lot of different kind of directing style. Maybe not a lot, but some different directing styles to it, right? With Prometheus and Covenant. And then there's the original Alien, which is kind of like a horror story or like a ghost, or a scary house, but in a spaceship, right? And then Aliens 2, which is really fun, but a lot different than Aliens 1, right? Where it's just run and gun. There's lots of xenomorphs everywhere on LV-246 after the colony's taken over. Then there's Alien 3, which is a much slower pace. There's just basically one xenomorph chasing them in the prison colony the whole time. Then Prometheus, which, so there's a lot there. So with that, what are your thoughts, John, on what parts of the franchises this best represent?
I think based on what we've played so far, I feel like you could have, just thinking about like the original Alien and Aliens, right? Specifically, I feel like you could have both parts of that. Like, I feel like the system is set up well enough that you could, if you wanted to, really have that really suspenseful horror feel, right? That you kind of get with the first one. But then again, if you want more of an action, like run and gun, like you want to be able to have a lot of that, I think that's where the dice come in really well, and whatnot. So I feel like they've done a really good job with kind of building a system that doesn't get in the way, but that also kind of lends itself towards giving you the feel of the franchise. And for me specifically, and we kind of mentioned it before, but those stress dice that they add in, like as you're going through the campaign or the scenario, whatever, things are going to happen and you're going to take some stress, right? And there are ways to kind of mitigate that a little bit. There are ways to like remove some stress here and there, but it really kind of boils down to, am I in a safe space? If I'm not, then that stress is not going anywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to build, right, as things get worse and worse. And every time I have more stress, that's more stress I'm adding into my pool, which is giving me a better chance to succeed, but it's also giving me a higher chance of panicking. And I found myself several times, I had like 5, 6 stress. And in one case, I think I was raking a roll where I had more stress die in the roll than I had ability dice, right?
Oh no!
Yeah. And so, I mean, all in all, like I had like 8 dice I was rolling, but 5 of them were stress dice, right? And I rolled and I succeeded, but I also rolled 2 ones on the stress die. So I had to make a panic roll, and I think that's where one of my injuries. I think I lost my leg or something. My leg got broke or something because of something that happened.
You fell down an elevator shaft.
But I found myself as a player in those instances where I was rolling 5, 6 stress dice along with my thing. I was nervous, right, for the result, right? And it wasn't gee, I hope I succeed. It was, I hope something bad doesn't happen to me, you know? Um, and so I felt like it really, the stress dice really, for me, did that. Like, really kind of gave me that panicking feel that you get as you're watching the movies and you're going through those corridors. You see that slime coming to that acid or the slime coming down and things like that, and you're like wondering, crap, what am I about? What are we about to run into? What's about to happen? Is it safe? Right? I had some of those feelings rolling those stress dice.
Yeah, very cool. Dan,
So
what
it
do you?
sounds like the designers met their objective, which was to get the feeling of being in an aliens film into an RPG.
Yeah.
Of course, you can only do that with a good GM. Sounds like you had a great GM, John, or mother, as it were. I don't know if I'd ever get used to saying mother.
Right.
I don't think I
Technically
ever
game mother,
would.
right? But
Yeah, game mother. Sorry.
Game mother. The game mother? Is that like a dead mother? No, I'm joking. For the next Xenomorph merit badge.
Yeah, right.
But it sounds like because Free League does such a great job with the quality of their games, the art is just second to none. I mean, you've got a piece of art right up there on the screen, and the production value totally captures the films, totally captures the vibe of what you're going for. That helps a ton, right? And you have a dice mechanic that also contributes positively. You can do cinematic or you can do Galaxy Trekker, so you can, season to taste what your RPG group wants to do. Because some RPGs groups want to do 3 sessions and move on to the next system, and that is a perfectly cool way to go. And some groups only want to do 5e derivatives until until the next century flips over. So it sounds like it's a really good value. It sounds like the starter kit is amazing. I mean, just what I've seen you guys put up on screen on the starter kit looks like it's probably worth every penny. And you would recommend it, right? You'd recommend this. Now, would you recommend this, Jay and John, for a new folks who are new to who like the Alien franchise, and are new to RPGs? Or would you recommend it for medium level RPG guys, people that have maybe played D&D in one other system, but they're ready to branch out into something new? Or is this something where you'd be like, well, you'll get more out of it if you have more miles on the odometer than that?
I think you're muted, Jason.
We're on mute, Jay.
Thanks. Yeah. I think this would be a great system to bring someone in that has not played role-playing games but loves Aliens, because it's a simple system. They're going to know what a D6 is. Hey, you're just looking for 6, man. Throw it and let's have some fun. I think it'd be a great way, especially the cinematic, a great way to just bring someone in and say, hey, let's play a game. Let's have fun. I'll tell you this too. We had, and I learned this from you, Dan. One time we came over years ago, we were playing a Star Wars RPG, and you had like episode 4 just playing in the background. The TV was muted, but it was just playing in the background. And I remember thinking, man, that it was cool to just look back over my shoulder every now and then and kind of get that a little bit of, oh yeah, that's the kind of world that I'm playing in right now. So the whole time we were playing, we had Alien movies running in the background. And at times we would be playing and then I'd say, hey, stop, everybody look at the screen. And they'd look at the screen like, that's what this room looks like right now.
I also fell into the moment of the movie being more interesting than my game. We have 3 players that are staring off. I'm like, bring it back in,
like,
guys.
What, guys, do I need to turn the TV off?
You guys saw this in 1982. You saw it in 82. Come on back. Come back with me now.
Great game. It's totally worth it. It's $45. It is shipped from. If you're going to buy it off their website, you're going to have to pay shipping, right? Because it's not a U.S. based.
But come from Europe.
Yep, but
or
you can get
wait till Gen Con. They've got a great booth there, and
they do.
You have everything.
You can also get. I've seen
Gen
this.
Con attendee.
Yeah, I've seen this starter set in many game stores across the country. So check your local game store. They might have a copy. Well worth the money. Great stuff. If anything, if you just, the lore itself is just a lot of fun. So I give it a 2 thumbs up. I thought Destroyer Worlds was a lot of fun. It had a sense of aliens. It actually had stuff from Covenant in there with the black goo. And there's a name for it, but whatever. And all the things that it can do. So there were xenomorphs, there were neomorphs, there were people you had to deal with. There was the UPP, unit progression peoples, the United Americas. So they had everything from the franchise in this single box set that you could touch. And I highly recommend it. Had a lot of fun.
And that starter set is available on a certain online retailer named after a large river for $39.99, which is $10 off MSRP, and it is on Prime delivery.
Good stuff.
Well, and to add to what Jason said about this, I agree. I think that if you're a fan of Alien, like, you're going to love this, even if you've never played a role-playing game before. It is an easy thing to jump into because, again, you're just looking for 6. You're looking for one number, doesn't matter. You roll the dice, and that's what you're looking for. Pass, succeed, fail, kind of thing. And if you want to jump in, you don't have to pay, you don't have to buy the core rule book. You can buy the starter set, which is a great thing. Like, the starter set is awesome. Like, there's so much cool stuff in it. It comes with both sets of dice, the stress dice and the standard dice, right? So you don't need to buy additional dice or anything. It comes with some pre-made characters. It comes with a little mini adventure, the Chariot of the Gods adventure, which is like a cinematic adventure kind of thing. It comes with kind of a rule, the rule book, which is kind of really the core rules. Like Jason was saying, there's not much more to the rules than what's in that book, right? The core rule book itself, expounds on a little bit, I think, with just really getting into the lore, right? But the other thing I would say too is that if you buy it from Free League directly, you do pay some shipping,
which I recommend.
But you get everything in there in PDF form as well.
Yeah.
For that price, right? Yeah. Whereas if you buy it on, in your local game store or elsewhere, you get the stuff, but you would have to buy the PDF separately. So if you're really into the PDFs of this stuff, I mean, and you could go to DriveThruRPG and just buy the PDF versions of this by themselves too, if you want. All right. So if you don't need the physical product, if you just want the PDFs, you can go to DriveThruRPG. I think that's where they have them up there for sale.
And it looked like there was a lot of free online resources from where you were clicking through.
Yeah, a lot.
That didn't require a coupon login to get access to that.
It's just there, downloadable.
Yeah.
And from a dice standpoint, it looks as if they are D6s, and you could probably reappropriate any standard D6 if you know 1 is a xenomorph and 6 is a success.
Yeah.
You're probably in good shape.
The key would be you would want to have 2 different colors.
2 different colors.
Yeah.
That's all you got to have.
So you can tell the difference between your stress dice and your normal dice.
And if I roll something on a stress dice, is that going to counteract something on the non-stress dice?
Nope.
Okay.
If I roll a 6 on a stress die, that's a success.
Okay.
Yep.
And why are the stress dice? Do the stress dice have more xenomorphs on them or something?
No,
Or
it's just if you roll a 1 on a stress die, you induce a panic.
you get a panic, but that panic doesn't exist on the black die.
Correct.
On the standard, on your standard.
Yeah. If you roll a 1 on a standard die, it doesn't matter. And the another interesting thing about that too is if you roll a 1 on a panic die and induce a panic roll, that doesn't necessarily mean that if you succeeded on your roll, but you had to roll a panic because of 1 on the panic die or the stress die, that doesn't necessarily mean that you don't succeed in what you're doing, right?
You just
The panic roll will tell you whether or not you succeeded based on what happens there.
Yeah. Some panics just say like, you freeze up, or some panics just say that you tremble a little bit. So you'll get a -2 until you stop panicking. But yeah, great game. A lot of fun. Highly recommend it for people who love the franchise and just want to get in and run and gun. Cinematic play is a great way to do that. And just a little, any final parting remarks, John or Dan?
I asked about the dice because I think people are way more. I mean, I've been playing a lot of games with specialized dice, right? And people are much weirder about sharing dice now than they used to be. And especially when they're standard dice. So if people can bring their own dice and they know they're sharing their own germs with themselves, it tends to be a stress reliever that never used to be as big of a thing, because when we were playing these other games, everybody was throwing dice at each other. And people love to buy their artisanal dice, and you have to honor that. And so having a game where you're not where you can leverage that is really great. I think from what I understand, if I was gonna buy the board game, the run and gun board game from Gale Force 9, which has expansions, or if I was going to buy this, it's 2 different experiences. A board game and an RPG are different. You're going to go through. It's a different psychological game, but it seems like this starter set is a super great value that would really get you into the headspace in maybe in a way a tactical board game. Even though I'm sure Gale Force 9 did a really superb job with their game. And there's some people that'll only play board games too. They won't sit down and do the RPG. It seems like this is a really, really nice addition to anybody's shelf. Even if you only play the starter set 3 times, you're probably getting a lot of use out of it.
Yeah. John?
I think the only, I really enjoyed playing. I mean, I love Alien. I just love the universe and the franchise and whatnot. I'm not really a horror fan in general, but like sci-fi horror, I really kind of love. So this was a lot of fun for me. I did notice, or I did remember that I don't think we talked about pushing the dice and what that does. So so I don't know if we wanted to take any time to do that. And
I told them
there was also
the
personal story cards and stuff that were in there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of extra stuff we haven't really talked about.
There's even more. There's even
yeah.
more. Yeah.
But
yeah.
Yeah, I think the pushing the dice mechanic, if you want to describe it really quick, I do want to mention that a Free League is working on doing a kind of an OGL for the Year Zero system. So how does that work super quick for those people at home who are uninitiated?
Yeah, so if you want to do a skill roll, you add those dice together, throw any stress that you want, right? If you roll the dice and you just don't get any, you don't get any sixes and you don't get any panics, you just fail, flat out fail. You can decide, I'm going to push this roll. I mean, I'm just going to try one more time. you give yourself one additional stress, throw that additional die into the pool, and then you can try again. So it gives you a little bit more of a chance to succeed, but it also gives you more of a chance to panic.
So I'm gonna mulligan my other dice roll, but have one more. There's a 1 out of 6 chance I'm gonna throw a panic.
Well, you can actually,
because I've pushed. And how many times do you get to push?
You can push once, and you actually can decide to push even if you succeed if you want to get stunts. So it's really, you can push any roll as long as you haven't rolled a 1 on a stress dice. So as long as you haven't panicked, you can push any skill roll one time. And you can re-roll as many dice as you want, but you have to add in a stress die and give yourself one more.
So you don't have to pick up the good dice and re-roll those.
Nope.
Nope.
You can keep those out and re-roll everything else, adding that additional stress die.
Yep.
That's great.
There are some talents, I guess you could call them. I don't know what the actual word is.
Yeah, that lets you push more than once.
That let you push more than once, but
those are exceptions.
Yeah, those are exceptions to the rule.
Cool.
Yeah. Once again, great game. And for those of you who have stuck with us and listened, just a reminder, right, that if you're looking for some really good D6 to play this game with, subscribe to our Patreon and our Beyonders level. You get a free pack of 6 special edition Tabletop and Beyond D6 will be mailed and shipped to you after your first month of membership. And then if you subscribe to the Far Beyonders category, you get an invitation to potential invitation to play an online RPG with us, and maybe we'll throw an Aliens in there one of these times. So if you're interested, this is an opportunity. Join us on Discord. We can talk about these kinds of games and others that we really love to play. And hopefully we will catch you guys on the next show. Thank you very much for sticking around. Have a good night.
Bye, everybody.